from here, and you could see these two instances are getting started, and if you see, they are being spread on multiple availability zone. Why? Because it would ensure that one of them fails, other would still survive if the availability zone is completely down. So let's move forward and let's see what auto scaling has done for us so far. So hopefully now my instances have been running. As you could see, they just started. Based on network, they would be spread across availability zone and may have public IP. It all depends. But my auto scaling group has created two instances for me, and let's see what is the current status of it. Good part is, everything auto scaling is doing for us, it is being recorded as an event, and I could go and explore those events, like what it has done for me. So here is my auto scaling group. It is showing me minimum, desired, maximum, details of it, Amazon resource name, so that I could access it programmatically. And here is the launch config I have used, what was the instance type, which network it belonged to, load balancer, health check, any advanced configuration, all these. This is of importance to me, call activity. In activity, it would tell me, hey, what I have done so far. If it is waiting for some notification, it would show it here. And it says, for now, I have launched two instances for you. Why I have done that? Because you have created a group, and that was a difference between desired and actual capacity, increasing the capacity from 0 to 2. So initially it was 0 capacity, and now it has created two instances. So it has increased capacity to 2. And in response to that event, it has launched two EC2 machine for me. Right. So that's how auto scaling is actually working. If you remember, I have configured that I want to perform some scaling. Let's see what scaling policy I have. So I'm going to this automatic scaling. Right. So here I have a target tracking policy which says, as required to maintain average CPU utilization is 50. So if CPU utilization goes beyond 50, what it would start doing, it would start adding more instances in my environment. So let's artificially trigger CPU spike. I would go to these instances and run that stress tool which we have installed. As it was installed in the AMI itself, I am able to access these instances and trigger it. So I would just connect to these instances through their public IPs and launch that stress tool in them. So copy this, and I would use again putty to connect to these instances. I'm just simulating. In real life, this would be happening because of your application load becoming higher, or maybe some activity happening in your environment. So I'm trying to simulate this connection here. I'm not sure about the security group setting, but hopefully you get the idea that how all these things would be working, right? So we will see that in a minute. Okay, give me one more minute. I'll try to see why I am not able to SSH into this machine. I'm not sure if I remembered by selecting that auto scaling group AMI or not, the PEM file associated with that, but that's fine. Let me try to connect it manually from here. Session manager, nope. EC2 instance connect, root is EC2-user, and let's try to connect from here. I'm trying to connect it through browser. No, that's fine. Now let me explain a little bit more on auto scaling group without going inside the details of it. What are the settings here? Let me talk about that. So first setting we have is a minimum, maximum, and desired. Minimum and maximum should be clear to most of us. Most complicated to understand or highly misunderstood is desired. Let me try to explain. Let's say I do not have desired. Just giving an example. Let's say we do not have the setting. We have only setting for minimum and we have setting for maximum. Now, if I have set to 2 and set it to 10, how I would know how many I have to launch? I have started with minimum 2. If now I say, hey, I need 4 instances. So if I go and modify this to 4, later somebody comes in and checks what is the minimum instance, it would say 4. So they would be not removing the remaining 2. So if we do not have desired, then there is no idea that what is the current capacity and what is the minimum capacity, because if you just keep on increasing minimum, then it becomes a permanent kind of a fixture in your environment. So what you would be doing, you would say, hey, minimum is 2. This is my auto scaling group. Minimum is 2. Maximum is 10. And my current is what? Current is defined by desired. So if I am saying I want on this minimum to maximum 10 group 5 instances. So I would go ahead and modify the desired setting. Either I could go ahead and manually modify that setting, or it could be an alert who could modify that setting. So actions, when they have to be taken into account, whenever something has to be added, we don't want to touch minimum, we won't want to touch maximum, and that's why we touch what we touch desired, and we change its capacity. So desired is what we plan to do. Nothing is impossible. We plan to have desired, but there are chances that sometime we may not be able to meet desired. There are some corner case scenario, so that is possible, but we plan to have, this is I am desiring to become, like I am trying to become like 5 instance or 10 instance, whatever it is. So desired is your moving factor which would keep on adding, removing. We don't want to touch minimum and maximum. What we would touch on, we would always touch on desired. So desired is your current state of your auto scaling group, and whenever somebody is manually or automatically changing something, that is changing desired value, right? One more use case. Let's say I have an auto scaling group. I want to have minimum 2, maximum 10, but right now I want to launch it with 6 for testing purpose right now. So how I make changes? If I make changes into minimum, it would become a permanent setting. So instead of that, I can say, hey, right now means let's change it to desired setting. And now I am able to access that instance. That is possible. So that's how I would be changing the desired setting. So desired is what is currently happening. What minimum and maximum are, they are static. They won't change unless you do it. So that is possible. So hopefully this desired is clear. Now, what I could also do, I could have different instance types in that. I could say, hey, what I'm looking for, I am looking for some T2, I am looking for some C5, I am looking some R5. So I could combine all of them into one auto scaling group. So that is also possible. So we could do that. Plus, you could have different billing family. What does it mean? You may have a auto scaling group, which I want auto scaling group. I want you to have 100 instances, but 20 I want from on demand or my reserved instance capacity, and 80 I want you from spot instances. So what you could do, you could add this kind of combination within your auto scaling group for different billing family, should not be a problem at all. So that's true. And as I explained you, we could launch it across availability zone. So you could run it across availability zone without having any issue. So these are some of the common settings which we have, right? What kind of tool I use for writing? This is a tool called Epic Pen. So if you heard about it, this tool is called Epic Pen. This is available for Mac also now. So I use this tool called Epic Pen to draw and write. Okay. Now, what else can be done? So what was the process of launching auto scaling? Create a base or golden template, as we call it, create a launch configuration and configure your auto scaling group. That's what we have used so far for configuring auto scaling. Now, there are some policies which you could leverage with your auto scaling group, and that's what I want to explain further. So my auto scaling group is ready, and I want to now talk about some of the policies which can be used to trigger auto scaling when I would add capacity, when I would not add capacity or remove capacity. I could go ahead and make changes. So let's see, go ahead and edit it. So I'm editing my auto scaling group. I would be able to change capacity here, minimum desired, launch config, all these settings, health check, advanced configuration, and here I could have my termination policy, or I could have additional policy for launching my machine. So that is possible. I could add some policies here if they need be. So now when I'm deleting instances, what would be my strategy? If the time permits, I will talk about that. But let me right now focus on what are the common auto scaling policies you could use. So there are 4. Manual scaling, right? If I manually want to go and install something, I know that, hey, my QA has just started a testing, and for that, I want to be ready and let me go ahead and manually change something. So when you say I want to do manual scaling, that time what you are basically doing, you are changing your desired capacity. That is a manual scaling. Pretty easy to get started. Just change your manual scaling and you would have that much number of instances. Whatever you want should not be a problem. So that is your desired capacity. Manual scaling, manually going and changing it. Why I would do it? Probably I know, hey, today is what we are going with the testing and we require 10 instances. Let me go and manually change it. I don't want to wait for CPU to bump up and then auto scaling to kick in. I want to be upfront ready for that. That is manual scaling. Second is scheduled scaling, not a very complicated one. If you know you do a payroll processing system and that always requires of capacity at the last day of the month, I could put a schedule. So I don't have to manually look for it. It can automatically pick up the schedule and on that schedule would be able to go ahead and utilize it. So manual scaling is good when somebody asks you, hey, there is a problem, please add capacity. Manual intervention required, manual scaling is good. Scheduled, when you know about these things upfront. I know that I am going for vacation or there is a company wide shutdown for Christmas holidays. So I could say, please scale down and make my minimum to 2. I don't want more than that. So that is where I would be saying. So if you know about the event upfront, or if it is a regular event which is happening, probably that time scheduled scaling would be a best use case for you. So you could use scheduled scaling in that case, right? So hopefully this one is clear. Now, what else? I have explained you that, sorry, uh, there is an option for you to utilize something called, give me a minute, let me go back here. In scheduled scaling, manual scaling. Now, in dynamic scaling, we have multiple ways. Dynamic scaling can be based on a threshold. We will talk about what a threshold is. Or dynamic scaling based on could be target tracking. So I'll explain both the policies to you, that how we could meet based on threshold or how we could meet based on target tracking. We will be talking about that. Let's go ahead and discuss these things. So scheduled scaling hopefully is clear. What I'm talking right now, dynamic scaling with target tracking. Pay attention. This is a little graph which I want to show you and it would help you in understanding better. Now, to give an example, like I have to give always, anybody drives a car with cruise control. Anyone? Anyone drives a car with cruise control? If you do, what is the advantage of cruise control? Anyone? What is the advantage of using cruise control? Why in cars you would have cruise control? Or simple example, we all have air conditioning and that air conditioning will be having a thermostat. This thermostat would be monitoring the temperature. It's kind of autopilot. It automates driving, consistent speed. So not automate driving, I would say it is a consistent speed thing. So when you put cruise control and you said, hey, I want a cruise control with the speed of 40. What cruise control will do, it would ensure that, let's say you are going on a slope and your car speed is increasing. So I'm not the best driver for cars, but let's say this is your car and it's going downhill and its speed is increasing because of gravity. So it would ensure that it makes your car again into steady state of 40. So that is what a cruise control is. Or simplest would be thermostat. Thermostat in your house, if I set it to 24 degrees, if my temperature goes up, it would cool it down. And if it has facility, if it goes down, it would then heat it up and maintain a steady state performance of 24 degree for me. So that's how we would be using it. Good on highway, go to 120. Could be, it depends. If you are in that place, yes, highway 120 is possible, but I would still not put 120. It's a little too much for me. All right, now let me give a technical context here. What I have said here, hey, I want to set up a average CPU utilization. I want to monitor CPU. And if you look at this graph, this thing here is says my target utilization. Maybe I have application. That application works best when I have less than 50% CPU utilization. Maybe it is designed like that. If your CPU is below 50%, it gives you optimal performance. It gives you best performance. So my target is I don't want ever to go beyond 50. Okay, so what I did here, if you see this line here, this pink one, this says target utilization, and I have set it to 50% target utilization, that I want to go maximum up to 50% utilization of my EC2 instance CPU, nothing beyond it. So what can be done for that? So I have set a target. Now Let's see what is currently happening. Two graphs are there, so pay attention. This graph below is for your traffic over time, and this graph here is your CPU with number of instances. And here three metrics are there. The green line is representing your number of instances. So if you see this, number of instances are currently 10. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And this is the traffic which is coming in. We expect and set target tracking here 50%. Now what happens? Let's see. Let's say due to whatever reason, we have more traffic coming into application. So what we did here, we had more traffic. Question to you, if more traffic comes in, my CPU utilization currently, which is below 50, this blue lines which you could see here, what would happen to my CPU utilization if I have more traffic coming into my application? Would it increase or would it decrease? What would happen? Anyone? What would happen if I have more traffic coming into my application now? Will it have increasing traffic on CPU? Obviously, yes. So what happens as soon as my traffic comes in? What is going to happen? I would be seeing more traffic coming to application, and that would mean my CPU utilization is also increased. So let's say now what happened from 50% or 45, 50% utilization, I am now reaching out to be somewhere on 75. Is it a good condition? Not a good condition, because I said I want to always remain less than 50%. So what auto scaling will do? Auto scaling will find out, okay, you have reached beyond 70, beyond what the threshold we have put. Threshold was 50%, you are beyond it. What can we do so that you come back again and remain with us? That's what we are looking for. So what we want here, as soon as my CPU utilization goes up, I could see this blue line here, auto scaling will kick in. It will find out, hey, how much is the breach? Breach is like 25%. How many instances we can add so that we could remove that problem? So what we would do in that case, we means auto scaling. Auto scaling will increase your number of instances. We had 10 instances, it would add more instances so that we would be able to handle the extra load which has come to my environment. So what I'm going to do now, I am going to add more instances. So number of instances has increased from 10 to 15, and hopefully once they have reached to 15, it would bring down my utilization again to below what I was expecting. So my utilization is again going. So it would identify when your utilization is going up, and based on that, it would add capacity or remove capacity to keep you within that tracked limit. That's what we are doing as a target tracking. So we set a target and let auto scaling group handle that target. Like in your cruise control, you set a target for a speed, or in thermostat, you set a target for temperature, and let the system handle when to add, when to remove, when to heat up, when to cool down. That's what exactly is the target tracking. Everyone okay so far? Right. Now, does it mean that we always have to, doesn't that have contradict the minimum and maximum desired? No. See, desired would keep on changing. Minimum won't be there. Minimum will never be touched. So even if I am not having that much utilization, but if our minimum is 10, it would always keep 10. It would never scale down below 10. So minimum would never be breached and maximum will never be breached, because what could happen? Let's say this was an attack on your application. Your utilization keeps on increasing and increasing. Does it mean that I have to keep on adding up to infinity instances? Who would pay for it? So we don't want to pay for infinity, and that's why we always put a maximum threshold. Hey, come what may, I can't give beyond that, because that would have an impact on my billing. So I can't go beyond it. That is maximum. And minimum, come what may, I always want to keep two running. Whether somebody is using it or not doesn't matter, but I'd never want to go below two. So that is minimum and maximum, right? Hopefully this is clear. So maximum is always required. You cannot create auto scaling group without minimum and maximum. Okay.